Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So doing something a little bit different today. Today we've got a top 5 beta nerfs. So I've been playing this game since beta. A lot of cards went under quite a few different changes before we made it to global launch, when I'm sure many of you started playing. And I thought it'd be cool to take a trip down memory lane to look at some of the more busted cards that were changed before global launch. Our first card here was actually one of the first changes to a card made in Marvel Snap shortly after the beta released. Nova has been changed since launch from being a 2-power to a 1-power, but that is not the biggest change that has been made to this popular and powerful card. Originally, Nova was a 1-cost 2-power that reads, "When this dies, give all your cards plus 2 power." This was about as insane as it sounds, and pretty much every deck in the game was running Nova in this period. The popularity of this card was also helped by the fact that Nova was an easy to access Pool 1 card, whereas some of the other cards on our list here were Pool 3, so not everyone had access to them right away. This was also back before the token shop, so there was no real way of targeting the Pool 3 cards you were looking for. Some of the powerful other mentions we'll see in this top 5. Nova was an absolute terror in its heyday, going in pretty much every deck in the game. There's always a good reason to include Nova. It was a little trickier to proc because at the time, Killmonger actually was a Pool 3 card. That eventually got changed into Pool 2 later down the road, but you did still have other ways of activating the card, such as Carnage and Deathlock, who were very popular in a lot of decks in order to enable the power of Nova. Nova was changed on June 28th in patch 2.02 that brought changes to a wide variety of cards. In the developer comments, they mentioned after looking at card performance, they have identified Nova as a very clear outlier. We believe the change from plus 2 power to plus 1 power brings the card more in line with other deck strategies. Nova continued to see a lot of play post-global launch and eventually was further adjusted, going from a 1-cost 2-power to a 1-cost 1-power to give a little bit of a downside for its very powerful effect. The developer comments on this change said Nova's effect makes him much stronger than an average 1-cost card. We don't think it's appropriate that he has the stats of an average 1-cost card. Even after both these changes, Nova is still a very powerful card and still sees play in a decent amount of decks built around using his effect. Nova was not the only card changed in this early balance patch. Another one that was very popular and also a Pool 1 card was Devil Dinosaur. Originally, Devil Dinosaur was a 3-cost 0-power with ongoing plus 2 power for each card in your hand. This is about as insane as it sounds, and it did not last very long, much like Nova. Devil Dino very quickly got nerfed to a 4-cost 0-power. The developer comment said Devil Dino was way too powerful for its cost. Typically, you could expect around a 6-power Devil Dinosaur without extra investment, which lands the card at roughly 4 cost worth of power. Once you start investing in its effect, its power shoots way beyond what a 3-cost card should be able to achieve with how easily cards like Sentinel and Moon Girl complement the dinosaur. They've decided to bump up Devil Dino's cost to bring it more in line with the cost to power ratio we expect for cards. Just under 2 months later, another change would be made to Devil Dinosaur, bumping it up from a 4-cost 0-power to a 5-cost 3-power. The developer comment for this said many of our 5 and 6 cost cards don't quite live up to their lofty energy costs. We'd also like to give our 5 cost cards some more identity, as many of them at the moment have rather simplistic effects compared to many of the other cards in Snap. We're making a suite of balance changes targeted at the 5 and 6 cost range to help some cards that are underperforming and provide some more interesting options at 5 cost. Even after this change, Devil Dinosaur is still a very powerful card and one of the cards players typically lean pretty heavily on in Pool 1, Pool 2, and even early Pool 3 before they have access to the bigger collection of cards. Before we move on, I want to give a special thanks to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. ExpressVPN is a great service helping protect your data online from your ISP selling it to advertisers. Have you ever wondered how ads always seem to target exactly what you're looking for? Part of that is your ISP being able to legally sell all your data. ExpressVPN puts a stop to this by rerouting 100% of your network traffic through their secure encrypted servers. That way your data isn't being sold to the highest bidder. It's also great for accessing content that might not be available in your country. How many times have you wanted to watch a show on a streaming service only to find out it's not available in your region? With the click of a button, that is no longer an issue, and you now have full access to whatever service you are paying for instead of just getting a small part of it. Fire up the app, press one button, and your data is protected. You can check out ExpressVPN via my link in the description, which will get you your first 3 months free and help support the channel. Thanks again to ExpressVPN for sponsoring today's video. The discard archetype also went under a number of changes in beta, including both buffs and nerfs. But probably the most iconic card that got changed in the discard archetype during beta was Hellcat. Originally, Hellcat was a 2-cost 6-power with the same effect it has now of discarding 2 cards. I suppose the idea here was the discard 2 was supposed to be viewed as a downside, and they gave it higher stats than normal for the cost to compensate for the negative effect. As many card game players already know though, in many decks, discarding isn't actually a downside and can even be an upside. So when you combine this with other early unnerfed cards, like the original Strong Guy, who was a 2-cost 3-power that got boosted when you had no cards in hand, Hellcat was just an insanely efficient 2-drop that really blew everything else completely out of the water in terms of power for its cost. This card was made even more popular in Sarah shells that could get it down to 1 mana, and by playing it on the final turn, didn't have to worry about the downside of discarding cards since the game would be ending. The developer comment for this nerf was, Hellcat is clearly a very strong card. So we considered what direction to take her. We decided to adjust the curve of discard effects and how we cost them. Discarding 2 is now clearly a beneficial effect, so we have moved Hellcat's discard multiple effect up to 4 costs to nerf her. We are also subsequently buffing Swordmaster and Colleen Wing to 3 cost and 2 cost respectively to maintain our curve of discard cards and help the 2 out. So while Hellcat was significantly reduced in power, the other 2 cards in the discard archetype did get some buffs to help compensate, but Hellcat was never really used as aggressively in Sarah shells again after this change. As we got closer to launch, we saw 2 cards be some of the most powerful things that have enabled some of the craziest, most degenerate strategies in all of Marvel Snap, and were subsequently nerfed for them. Our 4th card here on the list is none other than Mr. Negative. If you can believe it, originally Negative was a 4-cost 4-power with the same effect he has now of flipping all the cost and power of the cards in your deck. As more players got access to the powerful cards available in Pool 3 that especially helped enable Negative, such as Mystique and Wong, this card became very problematic. Dev's first attempt of nerfing Mr. Negative was reducing him from a 4-power to a 1-power while retaining his 4 costs. The developer comment for this said, the Mr. Negative deck is very strong and tends to have an unhealthy play pattern of skipping your first few turns. We are taking Mr. Negative's power down to tone the deck down. While this may seem like a big change, the power of the deck is largely in the cards hit by Mr. Negative, so we don't foresee this being a massive hit to the deck's overall power. Unsurprisingly, they were right in that comment, and reducing by 3 power really was not a significant hit to the Mr. Negative deck, and it continued to be a very dominant force in the game. In the following balance patch, Mr. Negative would get yet another change, going down from a 1-power to a -1 power, for a very flavorful change that delivered a more meaningful nerf than the first time around. This also came at the time of changing our last card on this list, Magic. In the developer comment for this change, they mention another card and the final one on our list here, Magic, saying we believe the Magic change will have a big impact on Mr. Negative, but they were also taking a bit more power away from him just in case. Seeing how Mr. Negative can still do some really crazy powerful things now at -1, it's hard to imagine how oppressive he might have been at 4 power. The last and probably most degenerate card on our list here is Magic. Originally, Magic did not have the stipulation that she could not be played on turn 6. This was an insanely broken effect, as you could just extend the game on turn 6 when your opponent was not expecting it. So they would throw their most powerful card out, expecting the game to end, and then all of a sudden there would be an extra turn for your opponent to react to whatever big thing you tried to close the game with. This also became problematic in mirror matches, where both players were trying to extend the game, and it really kind of warped the meta in a way where you had to play around a turn 6 Magic, otherwise you would often be in a disadvantageous position. The change to Magic that was made was making it so you can no longer play her on turn 6. Developer comment for this mentions playing Magic to unexpectedly extend the game on the final turn is very powerful in game warping effect, so they're adding this restriction to her in order to tone her down. Personally, one thing I would have liked to see different here is maybe instead of making it so the card can't be played on turn 6, maybe just make it so the on reveal does not go off, so that way you can at least still get a body if you need it. But this was definitely a positive change for the game and did away with one of the more meta warping effects we saw before release. So those are the top 5 beta nerfed cards that I wanted to cover today for this video. I think it's really interesting getting to take a peek back at the balance in beta and some of these cards that were really ridiculous in their original forms before being changed to be a bit more balanced and enjoyable to play around. I'm curious to what you think about these cards and the changes made to them. Do you like these changes? Do you wish different changes would have been made? And would you like to see more of this style of content of revisiting some of the changes made to past cards? But that is going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.